Welcome into Fox Valley Headline Makers. I'm your host, Jared Schaefer, and today we're discussing the Chapel on the Green in Yorkville, and we're being visited today by Howard Manthei and Martha Price, two of the parties that are involved with the Chapel on the Green. Howard and Martha, hello to you.
Thank you.
Hello.
Nice to be here.
Nice to have you both in studio with us today, and I understand that 2015 is actually the 160th anniversary of the Chapel on the Green this year, and I'm sure a lot of events are maybe planned throughout the next 11 months. And first, maybe kind of give us a background of what the Chapel on the Green is for those like myself that maybe aren't too familiar with the organization.
Well, I'd be happy to do that. The chapel itself, the building, built 160 years ago, but back in 1832, 9 people from New England decided to start a congregation, so it was the Congregationalists from New England. And then it took them some time. They met in their homes at first in some other buildings, but they finally then decided to build a structure, and that's what we have today. And it's been a congregational church over the years. Jumping way ahead to 1990, when the congregation built a new facility in Yorkville on the north side, the countryside center, that left in question what to do with the original building. And I was with the Historical Society at the time, and they talked with us, and we took over the responsibility for maintaining the building, moved archives in there and so on, and still had weddings from time to time. And then 5 years ago, the Historical Society put up a building at their facility in Route 71 and moved out, and so a new group of us reformed, and the Chapel on the Green then continues on with the name. And as we'll talk about here, we spend a lot of time with weddings and so on, but it's in use constantly. It's right off Route 47 in the center of Yorkville, just across from the town square, up from the river. And it's just a wonderful, picturesque location. And of course, we have brides coming in that have parents and grandparents that were married there, and as well as people that aren't affiliated with the church, but they just like that New England look. Mm-hmm. And I did bring in the original early photograph of that I could talk about a little bit more.
Absolutely, yeah, and we'll get a camera on that picture, yeah, and describe a little bit of what it is.
Well, the church itself, as I mentioned, sits directly across from Town Square, and initially when this early photograph was taken, and we're not sure just when it was, but it's basically the same today. It did lose its tall steeple over the years. It's always been one of the weak points in architecture, mm-hmm, is with winds and storms and so on. But it's basically intact, has gone through some renovations. Probably the most drastic was in 1955 when the building was raised. They dug a lower level basement, put a full kitchen in there, and then added a wonderful 2-story addition for Sunday school classes at the time. And the building is used constantly, either from weddings. We have the Boy Scout Troop 40 that's hosted there, so they're meeting there on a weekly basis. And we have a couple ladies have a baking business called Treasury Breads that if you walk in at the right time, it just knocks you over.
Smell all the bread in the ovens, right?
It's just wonderful, yeah.
Well, you had mentioned a little bit about the renovations that have taken place over the years. Is that just maybe one of your, for lack of a better phrase, constant battles that you're receiving? You know, this needs replaced or that needs replaced?
Yeah, there's a challenge. In the last 5 years, we've added full insulation and upgraded the electric system, and just did painting in this past year. So it's as good a shape and remarkable, really. Folks are just astounded when they come in to have that history and that charm and still have it mm-hmm, presentable and usable.
Very neat, very neat. And Martha, I understand that you are actually the organist aficionado at the Chapel of the Green. Tell us a little bit about organ playing over the years.
I played that organ when it was still a church. And then when they built their new church and they said they were going to leave that for weddings, I said, I'll play for weddings, because I like to play that organ. It's about 116 years old at this point. It was put in the church in 1899, but it still works. It's been maintained all this time, and it really has a good sound. People are impressed.
A lot of maintenance to keep that kind of going?
Not too much. It's tuned every 6 months. There's one kind of repair that needs to be done that would be just way too expensive to do, so we just live with it. And
sure.
Nobody really knows except me, what the problem is.
So, well, your secret's safe with us if you want to maybe divulge it later today. What's maybe the big difference of playing the organ maybe versus playing the piano?
Well, with the organ, of course, there's the foot pedal keyboard, so you're not only playing, there's actually 2 manuals too. So you have a choice of playing on the upper manual or the lower manual, or a combination of both, and then also having to play the foot pedal at the same time. That's the biggest difference between the piano, but then also the technique that you use. On a piano, if you strike a key, it will resonate for a while, but once you hit a key on the organ and take your finger off of it, the sound is gone. So you have to use kind of a crawling technique to keep the sound, even.
Okay.
You really have to be ready to hit the next key before you let the other one up. So that's something you have to learn when you're learning to play the organ
sure.
correctly.
Yeah.
That is.
And are there maybe any differences between as you're using the hands as far as like one level and then the second level, or vice versa, or not really?
You get used to that. You don't think too much about that. And actually, there are organs that have more than 2 manuals, so that you might have a bigger difference, in the reach with the hands. But once you get used to that, you really don't think about it.
Sure. And I'm sure a lot of the wedding parties are very appreciative of your skills during their service.
Well, I do play for a lot of weddings, and they seem pleased.
Early on, and I've learned more from Martha here in the last months in getting ready for our program that we'll be doing shortly. And there's no electronics involved, and it's all brute force, mechanical manipulation.
Right. That's why it's called a tracker action organ. Obviously, there's electricity involved now with the blower that blows the air into the organ and through the pipes to make the sound. Initially, in 1899, and for quite a few years after that, there was not even that electric blower. So someone had to, manually use bellows, to pump air in, to get air through that. But other than that, when you're hitting a key, that's opening up the airway into the pipe, and you're manually doing that. On electronic or electric pipe organs, that's done electronically, so that you're not using so much force. You just hit the key, and there's an electronic trigger, that opens up the airway. So playing a tracker action organ versus an electronic or electric keyboard or whatever is sort of the difference between typing on an old manual typewriter, if you remember what that might be like, versus keying in on a computer keyboard.
And I know my grandparents had the old typewriters that. My grandfather was a retired pastor, so he'd usually type out his sermons on that, and we'd attempt to show him the computers, and he's like, no, I think I'll stick with my typewriter. So definitely I understand that. And on the subject maybe of weddings, I know the Chapel on the Green hosts weddings. Do you have some details on what an engagement couple might need to know if they're interested in booking at the Chapel on the Green?
Well, it ends up that no 2 weddings are the same, and Martha's been involved with many of them over the years, can contest to that, in the planning and so on that she is.
Once the date is set and that sort of thing, then usually the bride and groom sometimes want to meet with me to talk about music and have me play some things, and they can decide what they would want played, for the beginning and the ending, and if there's anything in the middle. And again, there's nothing standard.
Sure.
A wedding that's coming up, they requested it for the prelude that I do at least one Elvis Presley song and a Beatles song.
Quite the combination.
Right. Rather than, a total traditional kind of thing. So we just, as he says, every wedding is different.
And we have DJs coming in occasionally that
Right.
they don't use an organ or piano, but they just have their own selection of music that they want to use. We did bring in a photograph of the organ the way it was set up originally. We could talk about that.
Sure,
at
yeah.
some
Let's.
point.
Well, here we have a kind of a picture of a wedding party
Yep,
outside of
that's the
of
front
the
of the
chapel.
front of the building, and it was a couple of years ago that wedding took place. And as we keep working on, now I look at it and I notice that we need to have a fresh picture because it's been painted here in the last year, so it looks even better than what it is there. But over time, of course, the congregations did go through some renovations. I mentioned the main one was to add that extra addition on the back in the basement. But then internally, the organ was moved. It was in the center of the church, which is the photograph that we have here with the pipes visible. And then that's been changed back in the 60s, and they remodeled the sanctuary and moved that around a little bit. And there's always new pews that get added from time to time over the years as we read the history.
So just kind of like a fresh update
Yep,
from time to time. And we do have a picture here of the, it's going to be actually the center picture here, kind of on the broad picture of the organ.
Right.
But very neat. I've always, as a student that never continued in the piano from taking lessons, I do have a understanding of how
that's good.
hard piano is, and just attempting to tinker around the organ is very interesting and very difficult from an outsider's perspective.
Sure.
So, and this is the picture that
Right,
is.
that's the way that was from 1899 until we think maybe 1960. It was in the very front of the church, and the pipes that you see there are really called show pipes. No sound really comes out of them. They're for looks. All the pipes that sound are back of that in a chamber. When it was moved to the side, the feeling was that they were worshiping the organ, whether it being in the center. And so that's why it was moved to the side. However, today, if a new pipe organ is put in, people's ideas have changed. They want to see the pipes. So the pipes are now usually visible if a new pipe organ goes into a church.
Okay.
But in the chapel now, there are no pipes visible at all.
Very interesting. Was it very lengthy to kind of move the organ from the center to the side of the chapel?
Well, it must have been a major project. Again, they had to have this addition on the building, which I mentioned was in 1955 to begin with. But yeah, there's a lot of technical challenges to reposition, and then the pipes are stored on the second floor in a separate room. And for those coming to our presentation here on the 22nd, we've managed to take some photographs so they won't have to crawl down into the into the room.
Yeah.
But it's interesting when that organ tuner comes. You can kind of detail what they do.
Right, he has to go down into that pipe chamber, and he brings someone with him who sits then at the organ console at the keyboards, and he'll tell him to play certain notes using certain stops, that is certain sounds, and then he will tune the pipes, because usually some of them are at least a little off, and so he tunes those, and he has to climb around in there. Some of them he can't really reach. He uses a long pole, he says, to reach back and to be able to adjust those pipes. We have some sample pipes that we're going to be putting on display for our presentation on the 22nd, so people can see them up. We have some wooden pipes and some metal pipes, because most pipe organs have a combination of wooden pipes and metal pipes.
Excellent, excellent. Well, we'll dive more into the events that are kind of coming up on the calendar, but in the meantime, we will take our first break of the day. Much more with Howard and Martha from the Chapel on the Green here on Fox Valley Headline Makers.
So you see, son, good manners are important. Should I go through it again?
Yes.
Yes, please.
Yes, please.
Exactly. Always say please, thank you, you're welcome, excuse me, sit up straight, hold doors open for ladies. If the door's locked, knock first, don't burp, don't swear, don't stare, don't use bad language, or talk with your mouth full, keep your elbows off the table.
What table?
Don't interrupt. Cover your mouth when you call for sneeze. On the bus, give your seat up to anybody who has trouble standing. Bottom line, treat others the way you want to be treated. Got it?
Got it.
Good talk.
Most parenting is hard to do in just 2 minutes. But 2 minutes twice a day making sure they brush is easier, and it could help save them from a lifetime of tooth pain.
Hart, what's going on?
I'm leaving.
Why? What do I do?
Not enough. You constantly ignore me. You barely eat anything healthy. You're half as active as you used to be. The pressure is just too much. I quit.
Okay, I get it. I'll do better. Just
Please, don't leave. Okay. But remember, if I go, you go.
Listen to your heart. Don't let it quit on you. Uncontrolled high blood pressure could lead to stroke, heart attack, or death. Get yours to a healthy range before it's too late.
Looks like it's done.
Don't let salmonella get funky with your chicken. On average, 1 in 6 Americans will get a foodborne illness this year. You can't see these microbes, but they might be there. So learn the right temperature to cook each type of meat. Keep your family safe at foodsafety.gov.
'Cause nothing ever gonna make this world better if we don't start believing that love really, really, really is the answer. Everybody join hands 'cause it's time now. Spread the love all over the world. Spread it all over the world.
Welcome back into Fox Valley Headline Makers. I'm your host, Jared Schaefer. We are visiting today with Howard Manthei and Martha Price. They are both in from the Chapel on the Green. That's off of Route 47 by the historic square in Yorkville. And we got a lot of behind-the-scenes information as far as what the Chapel on the Green is, and 160 years this year the chapel has been part of the community. And Howard, we were talking a little bit before the break, or actually during the break, that there actually is no congregation that is associated with the chapel today.
That's right. It's we don't have Sunday services or anything. It's just a building that's available, and from time to time we'll have folks even for baptisms that aren't affiliated with other churches will come in and rent the facility just for that. Plus then we have programs of all kinds that we have gotten into.
Well, let's go right into it. We had mentioned in our first segment today a big presentation is actually coming up on February 22nd, and just a little background on the event, what the presentation is going to entail.
Well, all our programs are pretty much on a Sunday afternoon at 2 o'clock, as this one is. And I've been fortunate enough to be able to go into the church office, the Yorkville Congregational Church, and they've given us access to the original minute books from meetings when all these events were happening, the construction of the building to remodeling it. So we have great notes, have some wonderful photographs of the area. And I'll just remind everybody that this was originally the town of Bristol, and it wasn't until the 50s when they united with Yorkville, became one. So there was another church around the corner. We have photographs of that. There was a whole town block with buildings and so on that was on the Bristol side that we came across photographs that we'll be sharing with everybody at the presentation. And then we have an animated timeline so you can get an idea. The building was built before the Civil War, so just to tie connections into Depression and events that took place just physically, limiting what the congregation could do, and then as things got better, how the changes came about. Mm-hmm. And of course, after that part of it, which is my section, we'll be turning over to Martha, and she'll be talking about those pipes.
Yes, about the
playing
1890
some tunes, and of course my favorite one that she'll be doing is always a selection from Phantom of the Opera. So you have to have that, on a pipe organ.
Of course, yeah. I know Beethoven's Fifth Symphony, at least the first 4 notes of that. Dun, 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 dun.
Everyone knows.
It's kind of the tradition, I guess, of having an organ and playing there. And as a guy that has sung in barbershop choruses myself, and Howard, I learned that you've sung in barbershop choruses yourself.
Sure.
Also coming up on the calendar, the beginning of March,
Right.
March 8th, another Sunday afternoon, a barbershop quartet is actually going to be coming in and doing a little performance.
Well, I'll have to admit, I was able to twist my wife's arm, who kind of coordinates the programs, and said, we got to have a barbershop quartet, you know. And it's historic of a certain degree, bringing in the old music. And this group is out of the western suburbs, and they just have a blend of a traditional barbershop, but then they do some of the doo-wops as well that they've added to their repertoire. So it'll be a fun afternoon. And again, that's going to be at 2 o'clock on a Sunday.
And the name of the quartet?
Is the Cadillacs.
Cadillacs,
The
okay.
Cadillacs, yeah. You
Very
can
neat.
Go on the internet and you can hear and see them, as a matter of fact.
Excellent. We'll be sure to do a little research maybe
Gotta do
before
that.
coming to the
Absolutely.
show, get at least an idea of what their sound is like, and you gave us a little bit of that as well.
Right.
But are there maybe other events that are kind of on the calendar
Well,
and
sure.
set?
Right now, for sure. That was March, the barbershop, and then in April, of course, that's a high date on everybody's calendar with the 150th anniversary of the end of the Civil War. And of course, Springfield is going to have a major event going on with the reenactment of the burial of Lincoln. But in April, we do have a portrayal of a Southern soldier. Dick Healy and his wife, local citizens, are going to portray this couple, and they have researched and have letters that were used, correspondence between them, and it's going to give us a southern view then of the war, and especially the end of the war. So that we've had in the past, on 4th of July, I've gotten into the habit of having a president show up at the chapel.
That's
and
cool.
so we've had FDR and we've had Lincoln a couple times there, and it's just a neat afternoon after the parties and picnics are done to just come in and get a taste of history. Christmas is always a nice one. It's the madrigals from the high school that come in and do a program for us. And then we'll have others. We've had quilt shows and other programs, with the cultural flair to it to just get people a little bit different taste of different kinds of history over the years.
Now, talk a little bit about the preparation of some of these events. Is it hard to coordinate schedules like with the Cadillacs coming in or other madrigals coming in and putting those on the calendar in addition to the weddings that kind of come through maybe more so March and April and May, not so much maybe in February?
Yeah, or June.
Or June, that too, yeah.
So we tend not to have programs during the summer, during the high months for weddings. But yeah, Martha has been involved with coordinating and shuffling. And from time to time we have double headers where a couple just wants to get married on the same weekend as another couple. So that may mean that one gets married on Saturday, and then the next one a Sunday, Martha, that you...
Or sometimes there have been 2 on Saturday,
Yeah.
maybe early on Saturday afternoon and later on Saturday afternoon for the second one.
Oh, wow.
Sunday afternoons for our programs have worked out pretty well because usually we don't have requests for Sunday weddings. Usually weddings are Friday night, and
Saturday night. Mm-hmm.
So our other programs on Sunday afternoon have worked out pretty well. For some reason, people don't want to get married on Sunday. I'm not sure why.
And we've done some major rehab on the building for the brides and the grooms to get prepared. We've taken several of the rooms that were previously used for Sunday school classrooms and storage and so on, and just modernized them. So we have all kinds of mirrors and places for folks to get ready and to prep, and it's just a fun, exciting time, when you see all the commotion that happens on the magic day.
Sure. And how far in advance do you maybe recommend for a couple to, book the chapel on the green, or maybe not so much for weddings, but like planning the Sunday afternoon presentations or other gatherings? How long is that planning stage usually go on?
Typically, we're about 6 months out, and then if you remember, you get our newsletter that has a listing of the events that are coming up, but they try and schedule things, because a lot of these performers that we bring in get booked. This is like Mr. Lincoln is going to be real popular this year with the celebration for 150-year anniversary. So you do have to, it's a moving target, but we keep, asking folks and constantly inviting folks to join us as members to help. If you're a researcher, if you like history, if you're retired and you're a people person, to come in and help with showing folks and giving them a tour if they think they want to get married there. Just all kinds of need for extra bodies to come in and give us a hand with all levels of activity that goes on there.
And how has attendance usually been at some of the Sunday afternoon presentations and events?
We've had upwards of 100, for the popular ones. 40s and 50s are typical for most of them. Some of these are free. Our talk is going to be free, so we don't charge for us. But others, typically a $5 admission fee to help defray the cost. And at times, some folks or businesses may step up and just cover the cost of putting on a program too, which helps our budget a lot. When they can sponsor something like that.
And actually, talk a little bit about the budget that you guys have to operate within, and what all the behind-the-scenes aspect of that.
Well, fortunately, we've like I say, have a group of members that we have an annual fee for, but membership fee. But we've had some very generous contributions come in, especially when there's a major project that looms. We had a roof replacement early on. Last year we just decided to get ready for this 160th session that we had to spruce up the front of the building. It was in need of some painting and scraping, and we put out a plea, and we were able to raise the funds to bring in and get that job done. So a lot of the members on our committee are old members of the church, and they still have great ties to us to keep that going, as best they can. So, but we're always on the search, just like for any other non-for-profit organization, for funding and so on along the way. But so far we've been able to keep our head above water and have most of the major repairs under control so far.
And the weddings bring in revenue, of course.
Sure.
So that's sort of our constant, or what we hope will continue to be constant, revenue source.
Has there been times where actually weddings have been blocked out, all Saturdays in a month?
I think there's been times like that. Some people, as far as scheduling weddings, you were asking about that earlier. Some people schedule weddings a year or so in advance. But then others come in and want it done within 2 or 3 weeks, and if the time is available, we can do it. We can accommodate it.
Sure. So it just kind of depends on availability.
Well, we had a fellow that was going to be deployed last year all of a sudden, and they just decided, well, this has got to happen, soon. Last night we had a lady come through, and she has booked a November wedding for this year.
Okay.
So sometimes it's a year ahead of time, especially in the popular June months.
Sure.
In July, where they know it's got to be first come, first served.
And is the chapel open on a daily basis, for interested, parties to come through?
No, not really.
Not really?
I mean, it's more or less has to be on an appointment basis. But if somebody calls, somebody can probably meet them whenever they want to come and look at the chapel.
Okay.
But there's not a day or a morning where it's just open, anybody could walk in.
Sure. Just really quick, a couple minutes left on the program. Right. If interesting bride and groom want more wedding information, do you have a phone number or a website that you can direct them to?
Yes, we do. The phone number is 630-553-5070. And that's our wedding coordinators, and they'll set up a time and appointment to come in, take a tour of the building, go through the questions that always come up, of course. And they do just a wonderful job. Over the years, Bev and Donna Ment are the couple, familiar name in the community. And they've been through this so often they can usually answer most any of the burning questions that come up.
And a website as well? Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
I was just going to say, a lot of people find us through our website.
Okay.
They may Google, look for a wedding chapel, and we come up. And so a lot of them do get to our website and then contact us from there.
Excellent, excellent. Well, Howard, Martha, thank you very much for stopping by today.
Well, thank you.
Thank you for having
Howard
us.
Manthei and Martha Price joining us here on Fox Valley Headline Makers on the Chapel of the Green. I'm Jared Schaefer. We will see you next Thursday.